Muy buenos días. Es un gusto darle la bienvenida nuevamente para el segundo día del Diálogo Regional de Política OCDE BID de la Red de Integridad Pública de América Latina y el Caribe, titulado Transparencia, Integridad y Participación en la Era Digital, organizado por el BID, la OCDE, el Gobierno de la República Dominicana y Ética e Integridad Gubernamental. Esta sesión especial titulada Un enfoque innovador para combatir la delincuencia transnacional. A continuación, señoras y señores, los dejo en manos del moderador de esta sesión, Guillermo Lagarda, especialista senior de modernización del Estado del BID. Bienvenido, Guillermo. Adelante.
Muchas gracias. Buenos días tengan todos ustedes. Nuevamente, bienvenidos a este día. Y en esta ocasión nos juntamos aquí para conversar de un tema que se está volviendo cada vez más importante para todas las áreas que están involucradas en integridad y transparencia. En particular, vamos a estar conversando de cómo las herramientas tecnológicas pueden llevarse más allá junto con otro tipo de habilidades para tratar de profundizar en diferentes aspectos que puedan conducir a mejores controles, a mejores capacidades analíticas o investigativas. Y para esto tenemos a un invitado completamente de lujo. Él es un especialista de lo mejor que podemos encontrar a lo largo de todo el mundo. Se trata de Michele Riccardi. Michele Riccardi, lo tenemos también aquí presente en la cámara. Él es un investigador de la Universidad Católica del Santo Corazón en Milán. Tiene una formación que combina una cosa muy interesante. Tiene una formación en el área económica, pero también con un amplio expertise en la área de crímenes de índole financiero, así como de crimen organizado y de otro tipo de áreas que pueden ser concurrentes a esto. Michele, además, es un investigador senior en una área particular que se llama Transcrime desde 2006. Y dentro de esta unidad de trabajo, pues ha empujado muchos proyectos que han tenido también el amparo del trabajo a nivel de la Unión Europea, de la Comisión Europea. Y precisamente es en ese contexto que tenemos aquí a Riccardi, puesto que en muchas otras actividades donde hemos coincidido, hemos podido ver cómo se ha desarrollado una plataforma digital que no solamente permite enlazar las típicas bases de datos que podemos tener, la información, sino además da un paso más allá de el esfuerzo analítico que debe llevar con ella. Datos con analítica es lo que puede llevar a la efectividad. Entonces, tenemos aquí a Ricardo Michele y sin más preámbulos de lo que te los quiero dejar. Michele, el piso es tuyo. Tenemos una presentación y después un video, entonces adelante. Para todas las personas que quieran tener alguna pregunta, como se dieron en las instrucciones, pueden hacerlas directamente en el chat y estaremos tomando nota para dejar un momento para hacer una iteración de ida y vuelta con ellas. Muchas gracias. Michele, el piso es tuyo.
Muchas gracias, Guillermo. Espero que me escuchen bien. Buenos días a todos. Good morning, everybody. Pido perdón, pero yo voy a hablar, no voy a hablar castellano, pero voy a hablar en inglés. Mi nivel de castellano no es todavía tan avanzado para sostener una conferencia de este nivel. Pero igualmente, si quieren hacer preguntas en castellano, seré muy feliz de contestar. Entonces, voy a hablar en inglés. This topic, which we will talk about today, is very relevant, as mentioned by Guillermo, and being at the center of the entire event. Before going straight into the issue, I would like just to briefly tell you what is Transcrime. So the Joint Research Center of Transnational Crime, in which of which I'm Deputy Director and in which I'm working. So Transcrime is the is the Joint Research Center of the Università Cattolica based in Milan, and it is one of the largest crime research hub in Europe, probably the biggest one excluding UK. It was established in 1994, and since then we've conducted more than 200 projects at national and international level, dealing with a number of issues which are relevant both for research and for the policy domain. Transcrime is very well established into a network of not just academics, but also law enforcement, FIUs, anti-corruption authorities, other public agencies. And it employs an approach which is multidisciplinary. We combine sociology, statistics, IT, forensic accounting, finance, law, and other. Together with Transcrime, we have also a spin-off company, which is called Crime and Tech, which is controlled by our university, which has the scope to translate the research of Transcrime into practical tools, digital tools and products for both the public sector and some private organization as well. This is to stress how we think research should be intended, so as an applied instrument for facilitating the life and the work of, first of all, investigators and public authorities. Some figures, so more than 200 projects dealt so far. Of course, we are active in terms of publications, scientific publications on peer-reviewed journals, on books, papers, and so on. We have a very high number of partners, and we are about 30 people with this multidisciplinary background. The research areas is mainly related to what we call complex criminal phenomena, and especially transnational crimes, such as organized crime, corruption, money laundering, but also we deal with other type of illicit trafficking, from drugs to firearms, of trafficking in tobacco products, and new forms of criminalities, such as cybercrime and radicalization as well. Now, if you go on our website, you will see we have a number of projects. This is just, a screenshot of the most recent one. And today we will focus on one of them, which it's perfectly fitting with the topic of this conference. However, if you have a look at the titles of our projects, you immediately recognize the digital component, both in terms of the phenomenon we are looking at and in terms of tools and models that then we are providing to the public market and public sector with our activity. Before entering into this project, just a few words about how the scenario is changing, at least from our perspective. Well, analyzing multiple and plenty of judicial documents, investigations, institutional reports, and scientific literature, as well as open sources, I think we all agree that what we call transnational organized crime is evolving in the direction of an increasing overlap with forms of financial crime. This is what we usually call as criminal infiltration of the economy, which is not somehow a crime itself, but it's a process involving a number of offenses, such as corruption, such as collusion, or fiscal fraud. First of all, false invoicing, but also involving accounting manipulation, document forgery, money laundering. And this evolution means that somehow it is not possible to perimeter a priori the playground and to work sort of a silos approach. While we should, for targeting in an effective way the problem, we should have a horizontal approach and integrated approach to this number of problems and offenses. Another element, which I think it's clear to everybody, is the transnational dimension of the problem. It's very hard for all those working in the, let's say, transparency field in all its forms. It's very hard to limit to the national boundary. This kind of offenses and phenomena have by nature a transnational dimension, which means that also the international cooperation and the technological abilities to process number of data also outside the national perimeter should be employed. Another element is the cross-sectoral and the what we call the cross-environment nature. What do I mean? Well, it means phenomena which are able, or criminal groups, criminal actors, which are able to use simultaneously the real economy and real assets and digital environment and the cyber environment, mixing cash with cyber currencies or other type of payment methods, for example. All these have implications also on how we should use technology, how we should use data, and we will go back to this later. I would like to present you a case which I think is very relevant and very explanatory of what we have just said. So this is an investigation that was carried out in Italy about 2 years ago in the north part of Italy. And for those who know about the problem of organized crime, know that somehow the northern part of Italy is not a territory of origin of these groups, but it's a territory of colonization or infiltration. So we start with this, which is a graph of a quite complex scheme and structure of legitimate firms. All these boxes represent legitimate firms, which are interconnected each other. So these were controlled by a group of people, a group of entrepreneurs with no previous enforcement records. This group of firms were providing security and logistics services to a number of actors. First of all, to one of the largest, or probably the largest, food retail company in Italy. Actually, this is a German food retail, very active in Europe. And to a number of tribunals and prosecutor office. So they were, for example, providing the security service of the Tribunal of Milan, so the second city in Italy. But at the same time, this group of companies were making false invoicing services with some colluded firms, which allowed them to make tax evasion, VAT fraud, and also to accumulate a wide amount of cash off the records. And what they did with this cash, well, first of all, they corrupted both the private firms and the public authorities so as to gain the contracts for security and logistics. And they also provided economic support to a mafia family. So you see here how all these offenses, from tax fraud to false invoicing to corruption to organized crime to money laundering, all coexist at the same time. And this is what we are increasingly witness and observe in Europe and elsewhere as well. Just a focus on the firms. This scheme of firms had legitimate businesses also established abroad, so not just in Italy, exploiting the opacity of certain jurisdiction and the asymmetries in terms of company transparency that exist at world level. Now, why this is important? Well, this is just one of the many cases that triggered us in making projects in this field. And in particular, and I go back to one of the previous slides, we have carried out this project, which is called the Data Cross, which was ended in February 2021, was a project funded by the European Commission, which was coordinated by us and involved, among the others, the French Anti-Corruption Agency and the Spanish police. Now, this project was successful, and so the European Commission decided to fund a new project, which enlarged very much the number of beneficiaries and partners which wanted to benefit from what was produced by Datacross, which is something which we will see in a few seconds. And if you look at the type, number, and names of the partners, these are all public authorities and some representative of the civil society. You can see that we have sitting at the same table law enforcement agencies, Asset Recovery Office, from Europol to the Spanish, Belgian, French police, Romanian police. We have anti-corruption agency like France, Italy, Spain, Romania again, and the global network of corruption prevention authorities, which is supported by the Greco of the Council of Europe. But also competition authorities, such as the French one, Lithuanian, Czech Republic, and then a global network of investigative journalists, which are cooperating and sitting together with public authorities in this project. Now, if we think about the multiple nature of the criminal phenomena at stake, we understand how it is not odd that law enforcement sits together with anti-corruption or competition authorities. And one of the scope of the project will be exactly that these different categories and authorities exchange information on how they detect, how they identify high-risk situation, high-risk schemes, high-risk firms, so as to improve the collective knowledge on spotting, early detect high-risk situation. But in practice, what does this Datacross project do? Well, it does two things, basically. First, a classical, I would say, traditional research analysis, and second, development of digital tools. In terms of analysis, we have carried out a very large-scale analysis of anomalies of firms registered in Europe. We analyzed more than 13 million companies, more than 27 million owners, analyzing a certain number of anomalies which we will see. In terms of prototype tool, we produced a tool which has a public area which could be used by anybody, including the civil society, and the digital investigation tool which can be used by competent authorities. In terms of analysis, just a very bird's eye view. For example, we mapped the extent to which European companies have ownership links with countries in blacklist or gray lists, such as AML, FATF, gray list and blacklist, or tax, non-cooperative tax jurisdiction. So you can see here the map of Europe. Each region has a different degree of color. The darker means the higher the number of ownership links with gray listed and blacklisted jurisdiction. The second is, for example, we looked at how many companies are controlled eventually by trust, fiduciaries, foundations, funds, which do not allow eventually to recognize and identify a clear beneficial owners. And here again, you see that some areas like Austria or the Netherlands or some urban regions in Europe have a high number of this kind of firms. This has become also a public area which could be publicly accessible to understand how risk or anomalies distribute, but also has become a tool. Now, what does this tool do? I will also show you a brief video of how this tool works, but this tool makes many things which basically may satisfy the many needs that different public authorities have, because the needs of an anti-corruption agency are different from the needs of a financial intelligence unit, or from law enforcement, or from a contracting authority. So the first thing is it connects multiple data sources. So we take data from company registers, from beneficial ownership register, from private data providers, and from open sources. And then, as mentioned by Guillermo in the introduction, it produced some risk scores. So it's just not reporting data, but it's also processing data, trying to interpreting it and to help the risk assessment activity of many public authorities. So we map anomalies, financial anomalies, and territorial risk. This is also helpful for identifying, for example, cartels or cluster of firms which may signal collusive behavior, which is a crucial task of contracting authorities or competition authorities, reason why they are also involved in the project. To trace cross-border ownership links among firms, individual owners, identify links with local public administrator and politically exposed person, and also establish links with entities which or owners which have been targeted by sanctions and enforcement measures. Here you can see some screenshot. I go quickly because I would like to show the video. So this is, for example, a screenshot of the dashboard which provides risk scores and how risk distribute in a set of company. These are example of connections among firms. This tool is able to detect, and specifically, these are all the connections that were spotted by our tool among 600 companies registered in the gaming and gambling sector in Malta. And this shows that many of these firms are interlinked. Is this important? Of course, it is for example, if one wants to spot potential collusive behavior in case of procurement, but also it helps investigation and give intelligence leads. It is able to reconstruct the ownership structure of a firm also on a cross-border basis. So this is a firm which was present in Malta, but it crosses several jurisdictions, and combining data from different providers, we are able to approximate and to somehow identify, to trace the whole ownership structure. So in terms of helping identification of beneficial owners. And also do it massively. So all these blue spots are intermediaries, are foreign intermediate shareholders of the group of companies in Malta, and these are beneficial owners. Just before the video, to say that all these indicators that we will see are empirically validated. First of all, we are a research center, and we are not just providing tools which are, built on the basis of whatever guidelines, but we would like to test the predictive power of our risk assessment models, of our indicators. For example, this is shows, making a long story short, that some of our indicators are able to predict more than 80% of the companies targeted by sanctions, or more than 88% of owners targeted by previous sanction or by enforcement. So these indicators could be really used for early detect high risk situation. I would move, if it is okay with you, Guillermo, for the video. Okay, you should be able to see the video. So basically, with this dashboard, you can search by company name, or you can search by name of owners. So this is a dashboard which is constantly evolving. So what you can see here is probably not even the most updated version, because we are constantly working. So for example, in this case, we made a search for test as a name of company, and the result is companies which have test within their legal name in several countries. We see here Italy, Czech Republic, Russia, Germany, and so on. Or we can search by name of person. Antonio Bosisio is one of my colleagues. Here it returns all companies in which a contact called Antonio Bosisio is owner or is manager in different roles and in different countries. Of course, then it's up to the users to make a disambiguation, because you may see different birth date, and so we are maybe having a case of homonymity. You can search by ID, identification number, like the partita IVA, so the VAT number in Italy, or the CRN number in France. But also you can search by location or by activity and sector. Why is this important? Because this can be used also for monitoring purpose. So for example, you would like to do monitoring of how risk distribute within the construction of building sector in your region. So you can use this tool not just to trace individual companies, but also for having a broad picture of how risk distribute. So here we upload a demo set. So this is a set of about 47 companies which participated in a public procurement in Italy. And it retrieves the data real time. So it connects to different sources and recollect this information real time and process in real time. So basically, these are the list of entries. What it does, first of all, is it's 43 companies. What it does, first of all, is we can see how and whether these companies are connected among each other. So we see that, for example, among these 43 companies, there are some which are indirectly connected among each other. This is important in this case because we are talking about a public procurement for a public works, and we should expect that companies are independent. They are not connected each other. While in this case, they have links, which may, of course, reveal and show a potential collusive behavior. For example, these three companies are all controlled through a complex ownership structure to the same name of person. Another things that or in this case, for example, these four companies have interlinked each other. Another things that the tool does is also to check whether and how there are some kind of anomalous cluster of firms, also territory level. In this case, for example, it was a case of procurement in the island of Sardinia, and the tool allows to show the geographical distribution of the companies. So these are the 43 companies. It shows how they are distributed. In this case, they were all Italian companies. But we see also that there are some areas which have a high concentration of firms. While this may be not really anomalous, like for the city of Milan, which is a big city where we expect there are many companies, it is anomalous, for example, for this Cancello d'Arnone, which is a very small, tiny municipality in Italy, and we have 7 companies out of 43 which comes from this municipality. So we may expect that they belong somehow to the same owner or beneficial owner, or at least possible owner. And it would be not anomalous if the public work were here in this area, but in fact the public work were in Sardinia, so very far from this area. So these are all, risk score that may suggest intelligence lead. What did it happen in this case? And this is a quite important, I think, element. Well, as you know, it is very difficult for contracting authorities to exclude firms out of a public procurement just due to risk, to anomalies, okay? And in fact, the procurement went on, but thanks to this tool and to this analysis, the authorities were able to provide prosecutor office and investigation authorities with information. The prosecutor's office initiated an investigation, and as a result, they exactly found a case of collusion, of corruption, and they were found also that some of the companies involved were linked to a Camorra group active in the area of Caserta. So again, it's part of the risk assessment, identify the high risk on which to concentrate, to focus the efforts which can help to produce leads, investigation, to initiate activity. Just to conclude, this kind, for example, you can see on the map, this is the distribution of where the beneficial owners of the firms are born. You can see that there are also some people from Iran, from the US, and also the intermediate shareholder. So these are all Italian firms, which, however, have a number of intermediate shareholders in foreign countries. The tool also is connected to some open sources, and for example, it allows to check whether an individual has previous enforcement or sanction. For example, in this case, it shows that one of the beneficial owner of these companies was involved in a previous Guardia di Finanza, which is the Italian Financial Investigation Authority, for corruption, and the link of open sources which are connected to this person. Finally, this kind of tool can be used as well to see how the risk distributes in the set of firms. Now we have uploaded a set of 45 firms, but you can work as well, as I mentioned before, with sets of much higher number of firms. For example, in this case, we have uploaded the set of 600 firms active in Malta in the gambling and gaming sector. And you see that 78 of these 600 are labeled by our tool as high risk. And this is, for example, as I showed before, how the owners of these Malta companies are distributed across the world, how the intermediate shareholders are distributed. You may think these apply to other sectors, mining, for example, or construction, or import and export of certain goods which are at high risk. So to conclude my presentation, and then as mentioned, I'm available for any question. I think there are some key issues that merits to be addressed and discussed. First, these tools and this analysis shows that also, despite the establishment of beneficial ownership register, we should be able to go beyond them. It's not just necessary to look at who control firms, but also at how control is carried out. Which means look at the whole ownership structure, looking at the context of how links are distributed, also on a transnational scenario. I think that many people believe that with BO register, we will have a life which will be easier. That is definitely true, but that is just a starting point. We shall be able to process ownership information at large. And this means, first of all, the need to consult, combine, process multiple data sources, public registers, BO registers, company register, private data provider. And this poses some challenges, of course. First, different sources have a different degree of reliability. Information is not reliable in the same way. We need to be able to identify good information from bad information. There are technical challenges. If I have an owner called Michele Riccardi in Argentina or in Italy, they may be the same person or different person. We need to be able to index this information, to do reconciliation, what is called entity reconciliation, to understand if we are talking about the same person, because there may be also differences in terms of languages, in terms of ID, and so on. And this means also interpret the information, just not to take for granted. And this, I think, as a last bit of my presentation, puts at the center of the table of the scene one key point, that technology is not enough. We need human capabilities. Humans, thanks God, are still necessary, and I think will still govern the machine. But how to do that? Well, first of all, I think this is a quite specific domain which requires dedicated training. We need to train people from public sector, from private sector, on how to use this information, where to get this information, how to process it. It's not just taking the data, but it's producing analytics, which makes the difference. And which also somehow supporting, you know, my role means strengthening the relationship between public authorities and research centers and university on the other side. I think that, and I'm provocative on this, there is a much reliance of public sector on consulting companies. Totally in favor of that, but let's understand and recognize the added value that research, that universities, that academic centers may provide. And we are also cheaper, by the way. So with this, I think I conclude the presentation, but again, happy to answer any question.
Caray, Michele, cada vez que veo cómo la plataforma estructura los contenidos, los presenta y todo el potencial que está ahí, la cabeza da miles de vueltas de las oportunidades que hay. Y un poco pensando en eso, le hablo al público que se encuentra en físico allá en la República Dominicana. Si alguno de ustedes tiene alguna pregunta, por favor, Nicolás Dassen estará al pendiente. Los que estén en línea, yo las estaré atendiendo por aquí. Michele, también tú puedes ver esas preguntas. Y déjame entonces empezar con unas pequeñas reflexiones. Tú comentabas que había un paso por ahí en donde había que dejar de pensar los procesos de inteligencia, si así lo queremos ver, ya sea administrativo de campo, en forma de silos, sino de verlo de una manera horizontal, transversal. Y típicamente, por supuesto que la regulación hace el trabajo de la transversalidad, pues aplica para todos, y de ahí la importancia de que siempre se estén manteniendo los estándares actualizados, ¿no? Pero también esto que tú muestras aquí nos lleva a pensar la importancia de la tecnología para romper estos silos, porque permite entonces generar estas economías de escala, diríamos los economistas, realmente externalidades de un uso para múltiples partes. Y esto me lleva entonces a un par de preguntas que me gustaría que pudiéramos comentar aquí. Y la primera es, típicamente la manera en la que está pensado esto pareciera, como tú bien lo pusiste al principio, el producto utilizable para agencias policiales o de enforcement. Tienes también por ahí agencias anticorrupción, también tienes de competencia económica, etcétera. Pero creo que una cosa muy importante para el hacedor de políticas es no solo pensarla en la importancia que tiene en esos temas particulares, pero sino en la importancia que tiene desde la perspectiva de cómo puede ayudar a reducir las pérdidas económicas. Y entonces, desde la óptica de las finanzas públicas, esto se hace también crucial, porque se hace un usuario o un beneficiario de la inteligencia de esta naturaleza. Platicabas tú en uno de los ejemplos que diagramaste el tema de public procurement, de cómo se veían colusiones. Y quizá aquí lo que me gustaría preguntarte es si en la experiencia de lo que se ha estado utilizando la herramienta hasta el momento, algunas agencias de contratación pública han encontrado alguna integración donde les pueda servir precisamente para tratar de reducir áreas de colusión, o al menos mitigar la posibilidad de que haya abusos en la parte de la contratación pública. Yo creo que desde la óptica de un secretario de Hacienda, un ministro de Finanzas, eso puede ser muy importante porque es una herramienta que puede ayudar a mitigar muchas de las pérdidas que se van por ahí. Eso por un lado. La siguiente, Michele, tiene que ver más con el core de la data. Y esto nos pone en un panorama en América Latina muy, muy particular, porque sabemos que la data existe Y sabemos que la data, además de existir, puede ser accesible, puede estar disponible. Entonces, dependerá en qué países estemos hablando, los esfuerzos para que la data pase de un PDF a un Excel o a un CSV para que sea explotable. Pero la pregunta es, ¿cómo puede esta herramienta ayudar a cerrar estos puentes de lo que es la disponibilidad hacia la accesibilidad? Y me queda clarísimo que el otro puente que seguro puede ayudar a cerrar es la interacción entre las fuentes locales y las fuentes externas. ¿Cómo puede una plataforma como esta ayudar a las agencias usuarias para poder cerrar esa brecha? Y si quieres, por ahí te dejo estas preguntas. Tengo un sinfín más que te pudiera hacer, pero le daremos la oportunidad al público. Adelante, Miquel.
Muchas gracias, Guillermo, por la pregunta. So switch back to English. Well, the first is about public procurement. Yes, definitely it is used for this reason. As I mentioned before, some of the users and partners of this platform are both anti-corruption agencies, law enforcement, and competition authorities, but also other contracting authorities. And depending on the regulatory framework of each state, in the countries where we are active, these authorities have different roles, tasks, and activities that they have to do. But just to provide two examples of how it is being used and it can be used. The first is that I won't mention the name, but I think you can easily identify them. This tool will be and is being used for preliminary controls and risk assessment in public works related to Olympic Games. Because Olympic Games are a strong engine of public works, as we all know, attract a lot of investment and construction companies, and of course there is a risk that among the entities which are attracted, there are also firms related to organized crime, or at least firms involved in collusion and corruption schemes. The second example is that, for example, the Italian law enforcement and financial authorities is being using this tool for monitoring the provision of recovery funds which have been distributed after the COVID-19 crisis. In most countries in the world, we have the generosity of the countries have allocated a lot of resources, but to monitor in a quick way the beneficiaries of these resources needs technology and needs data. So this is another domain in which our tool has been used, as well as in, let's say, traditional AML investigation or terrorist financing investigation. Integration, data integration and data quality assessment. So this is a crucial issue. One of the projects is Not Data Cross, is another project that we are carrying out in Europe, funded by the European Commission, is basically to make an assessment of the quality and type of the data available in each country in terms of beneficial ownership registers, understand how different they are, how different is the degree of accessibility, how different is the quality, the level of updatedness, the format, and providing training to both authorities and civil society on how to use this data considering these differences. Because it's not just a matter of let's combine a local source or a local registry with a private data provider which gives information for the rest of the world. It's also a matter of how do I have to behave if the beneficial owner, which is included in the local beneficial ownership register, is different from the person which my tool allows to identify reconstructing the whole ownership structure? What shall I have to do? This is not a matter of technology. It's a matter of human interpretation, of being able to say, okay, this is a difference which is driven by different type of data, or this is a difference which is driven by the fact that the company wanted to conceal the beneficial owner itself. Of course, it's the integration between local sources and public sources poses huge technological or important technological problems, which anyway can be addressed, but also interpretation problems. Reason why I go back to my last point. We need to all learn how to use this data. We are in a new era of using this data, and we have to understand how to interpret them in the most correct way.
Gracias, Michele. Tenemos dos preguntas que el público hizo por medio de la plataforma. Una dice lo siguiente: Michele, en tu exposición mencionaste el uso de criptodivisas para eludir, incumplir las normas aplicables. ¿Qué piensas de la regulación de estas criptodivisas cuando hay en especial un país que ha adoptado como moneda de curso legal, ya que se presta a que las mafias se establezcan como empresas ficticias y cometer delitos? Esa es la primera. Y la segunda viene desde Gloria García de Colombia, que pregunta que si tienen una base de datos de proveedores ficticios declarados en los diferentes países que comparten las autoridades. Todo tuyo, Michele.
Sí. Entonces, en el tema de cryptocurrency, this is quite timely. So tomorrow we will have a training for one of the largest Italian bank exactly on cryptocurrency, because what we are seeing is the following: that there is an equation somehow that cryptocurrency equals risk. Okay. And many obliged entities and public authorities as well, but especially banks and so on in several countries, tend to somehow block, freeze, interrupt any kind of transaction related to cryptocurrency, because there is a sort of overestimation of the risk of cryptocurrency. And I think this is wrong for two reasons. First, available empirical evidence, such as that produced by software companies which works in detecting the risk related to cryptocurrency transaction, all these big companies more or less agree that the percentage of illicit transaction on cryptocurrency, on the total volume of cryptocurrency transaction, is still pretty limited, below 5%. Which means that there is a 95%, if these estimates are true, of cryptocurrency transactions which are not illicit. What can we do with this 95%? Shall we throw it to the garbage with the rest of dirty transactions? And this is a question that we pose to the bank as well. If you want to block a client because it makes a transaction in cryptocurrency, what will you do in 10 years? Okay, so again, there is the need to distinguish, to discriminate, and make a risk assessment of this. The second reason why I'm still not as much worried with cryptocurrency is that on the basis of our analysis of investigation, judicial documents, and so on, it appears still that there are still a minority of the methods used by criminal organizations to launder money and to move illicit money. Because it's true that nowadays with cryptocurrency you can use mixers, you can use exchangers that basically does not allow to track the whole blockchain. But it is also true that in the DNA of many of these criminal organizations, there is a strong reliance on cash. Still, cash is king, as told by many law enforcement. And on traditional methods, also because cryptocurrency as well as advanced somehow financial instruments require some background, which luckily not yet all criminal actors possess. So I'm not the one crying, wow, cryptocurrency is a danger, let's stop. But I'm conscious about the risks that are related to cryptocurrency, but also saying let's work towards a good risk assessment of these currencies. Of course, and I conclude, if then the cryptocurrency is a fiat currency in a certain country, that poses other type of issues. And just a joke, I was living in Argentina in 2002, and I remember that at the time in Argentina there were 15 or 16 currencies at the same time, and they were not even crypto, but they were problematic in any case. I remember very well the Patacon from I don't know which province, and that experience I think tells the risk, of course, that currencies poses, but it's go beyond the crypto issue. By the way, as regards the second question, actually our tool is quite flexible in integrating data that could be shared by public authorities. For example, in some countries, such as Italy, France, or Spain, we integrated the list of local public administrators that are held by Ministry of Interior, in order we can combine this data with the data on firms' ownership to understand if a firm is controlled or related to a local administrator. Or in some users are integrating in the tool also proprietary information taken from questionnaires or taken from internal blacklist and watch list. So the tool is pretty much flexible in integrating new information. So whenever an authority would like to share data on the declared nominee shareholders, they can be integrated in the tool.
Muchas gracias, Michele. Bueno, pues entonces ahora vamos a pasar a algunas de las preguntas que están allá en el piso. Nico Dassen, te dejo el micrófono.
Ciao Michele, buongiorno, come stai?
Muy bien, gracias.
Buenos días, Roberto de Michele. Michele, mira, tenemos una presencia aquí importante en el piso de funcionarios públicos de la República Dominicana, de la Policía Nacional, de la Dirección Nacional de Control de Drogas, de la Contraloría, de la Dirección de Impuestos. Yo me alegro mucho ni siquiera de ver una multa de tránsito, porque es la típica reunión en donde uno se siente que siempre es bueno cumplir con la ley. Y lo que te quería preguntar es algo que me parece que mencionaste en algún momento, y de paso decir que nos han dado 10 minutos más de tiempo en la presentación. Podemos extender los 10 minutos para hacer alguna pregunta más del piso. En algún momento mencionaste que evidentemente esta herramienta es muy poderosa en materia de persecución y de investigación. ¿Podrías darnos algún ejemplo de cómo en algún país que utilice esta herramienta las fuerzas de investigación y de persecución también, por ejemplo, colaboran con aquellos organismos del Estado encargados de la prevención? Y después, por supuesto, cualquier persona que aquí quiera agregar alguna pregunta, el micrófono lo tenemos abierto en el piso y tenemos 10 minutos más.
Sí, muchas gracias por la pregunta. In some country, for example, the tool is used twofold. Just to make an example, several investigative evidence pointed out in this country, which I will not mention, and in a specific region, an anomalous activity of actors, firms involved in the trafficking of oil and gas products. So basically, the investigation authority cooperated with the supervisory authority, and how they use the platform making a deep dive analysis of all the firms registered in that exact sector, in that exact region, to see, and they were some thousands, to see which one were posing or presenting red flags, okay? Because the point is that, okay, we understand there is an emerging threat, but you do not have the time to, of course, making a full monitoring of the situation. Therefore, the tool allows to identify out of the thousands firms which one had certain red flags, including connection to people with previous enforcement or connection to higher risk jurisdiction and so on. And through this, it filtered out some dozens of firms on which they could do an in-depth due diligence, an in-depth audit, and in-depth investigation. So this, I think, it's an example of how the monitoring and supervisory activity was working shoulder to shoulder with the investigation authority. Another case is about France, where, as you've seen, we have both the anti-corruption authority in France, which has a supervisory and also vigilance role on French companies, the competition authority, but also the French police involved in the financial investigation. And again, they have different needs, but they use the tool in different way. One starting from a lead and tracing an individual companies, individual owners, and the other having a broader picture or broader use of the tool. So somehow I think that this, this tool is potentially flexible for being used by both investigative authorities and supervisory authorities. Of course, there is an issue related also to, I think, the extent to which these authorities can employ data, because investigative authorities or law enforcement usually have a broader power in terms of also privacy than supervisory authorities. And our tool is designed in such a way that some kind of functions or the use of certain data is limited only to those competent authorities that can employ by law this information.
¿Alguna pregunta aquí en sala? ¿Milagros?
No. Bueno, queremos decirle que tenemos ahora, saludarlos a todos y decirle que para la República Dominicana es muy interesante que en esta conversación, estos diálogos con el BID de temas tan importantes que inciden en nuestros países en el desarrollo, tengamos la presencia de funcionarios del área en la que este tema, en el que hemos tenido esta convocatoria para esta mañana, esté presente funcionarios de las áreas de la Procuraduría, de la Contraloría, de la policía, inclusive de la DNCD, y de las áreas de investigación, de impuestos, etcétera, que tienen que ver con un área tan importante en la detención, en evitar, en disminuir este tipo de delitos de carácter internacional y de que tiene tanta lesión, tanta complicidad en el lavado de dinero que tanto distorsiona nuestra economía y daña la integridad del funcionamiento de lo público. Así que muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Aquí está, no recuerdo, no creo que me lo he identificado, un representante de la DNCD en cuya sala de investigaciones he estado yo hace algunos días viendo cómo funcionan, saludos, mecanismos de este tipo. Muchas gracias por estar aquí, porque es parte de las cosas que estamos haciendo y que hemos podido comprobar que se hacen con eficacia. La DNCD ha podido tomar en estos últimos años cuántas toneladas de productos de transferencia de narcotráfico en el país. ¿Cuánto? Se identifica, dice su nombre. Pásamele un micrófono.
Buen día. Yo soy el coronel Nakin Col Severino, director de operación de la DNCD. Y nosotros, bueno, en este periodo gubernamental
¿Con mecanismo electrónico?
hemos incautado, hemos decomisado ya más de 35.000 toneladas de sustancias de distintas especificaciones y hemos transparentado cada uno de los procesos interno de las operaciones.
Con el uso de la tecnología,
Con el uso de la
que
tecnología.
ayudándolo y la coordinación con otros organismos exteriores e interiores. Pero si ustedes tienen alguna pregunta que hacer, en este momento paso el micrófono a De Micheli para que él pueda, y cuando lo hagan, por favor, digan su nombre y su identidad.
Sí, no hay problema. Gracias, doctora Milagros. ¿Hay alguna pregunta más? Bueno, sin más, vamos a dar cierre a este evento. Lo tenemos registrado, grabado, así que luego les vamos a compartir el enlace para que ustedes puedan compartirlo dentro de sus organizaciones también y tomar nota de eso. Muchas gracias. Le paso la palabra a Paola Cabrera y muchas gracias, Guillermo, y al doctor Michele Riccardi por esta gran exposición.
Muchas gracias a la sala, muchas gracias, Guillermo. Con esto entonces concluimos la sesión. Agradecemos a los panelistas y a los participantes de esta mañana. Nos vemos hoy a las 7 p.m. hora Washington, D.C., 8 p.m. hora República Dominicana, con una sesión especial con Corea. Pasen feliz resto del día.